Hi there, thanks for watching this little video. The aim is just to give you some quick tips for the critical thinking exam that's coming up in the next week or so. A lot of you might have done the practice exam and been a little surprised by how it was set out. I just wanted to reassure you that every single one of you in doing this course have been using your critical thinking skills and developing them throughout the year. So you do have the skill set needed to do really well in this test, but just simply put, because you've been focusing on your subject area for so long, and you probably don't recognize that the skills that you've been using in writing and analyzing the arguments and ideas in your research can be applied to these little questions that are being put to you in the test. Alright, I'm just going to go through as quickly as I can and just give you a couple of really important tips and tricks, because there might be a couple of surprising elements, and also you might not be sure how to approach some of the questions. So here we go. But first of all, let's just talk about it quickly. Critical thinking, what is it? So it's the set of skills you use to create and evaluate ideas and arguments. It allows you to understand how arguments are constructed through the use of premises, reasons, evidence, and conclusions. Okay. In this test, you'll be trying to differentiate different levels of evidence by examining the differences between opinion, belief, anecdote, and substantiated views. So in this test, when you're asked to respond by putting forwards an argument, evaluating a position, you really aren't being asked what your opinion is. An opinion is when you put forwards an unfiltered view without any reasons. The test is asking you to put forwards your argument, your best argument, not your opinion of what you think. Okay, so if you're finding yourself writing a sentence that starts with "I think" or "in my view," that's really not what they're wanting to hear. They want to hear what the reasons are to support the view that you think is the best. Okay, you want to develop also show you've developed your skills in assessing the strengths and weaknesses of an argument and using a range of techniques. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Just quickly again, let's just look at what's being assessed. So by and large, the critical thinking test is getting you to comprehend, analyze, and interpret and assess some of the statements and issues and arguments that are being put forwards in the test. You'll need to provide interpretations rather than just simply stating matters of fact. So what this is getting at is the idea that some students think that they need to put forwards a position as forcefully as they can by sort of saying that things are true or things are factual. Okay. So in the past, some people who've done this test have just made up statistics and then used that as a piece of evidence to support their conclusion. And that's not what you want to do. You don't want to just appeal to matters of fact. You want to be able to support the reasons that support a conclusion, and you don't need to just say it's true because it's true. Okay, if that makes any sense, by appealing to something being a matter of fact. It is important to be aware that your background knowledge is being assessed for the test. The assumption is that you know nothing about any of the topics that are being provided in each of the questions. And what you'll find is that the questions do try to give you a lot of information and reasons that you can use and build on to generate your response. Okay. So yeah, if you don't know about a topic, don't worry, you are still able to get a really, really good mark. Everyone's going into looking at that question with the same level of background knowledge as you are, so don't freak out. And again, just the last point I wanted to reiterate, please don't say "I think" or trying to make it clear that you're expressing an opinion. You're trying to put forwards an argument, so use the language of argument, which I've talked about all through the year. Don't forget that you can use the critical thinking tab on the landing page of EI and click on that, and that's got a whole collection of critical thinking tasks and guidance that will help you prepare for this test. Okay, let's jump in and have a look at some of the questions. These first couple of questions are drag and drop. They look quite easy to do, but there's something that you need to be really aware of. You need to copy and paste each of these each of these statements here need to be copied into the blank spaces of the for and against side, but they need to be rebuttals of statements that are already there. Okay, so let's make that clear. So the question, let's just go through and read this question quickly. Australia's Civil Aviation Safety Authority has rules for the operation of unmanned aerial vehicles known as drones. It has been argued that people who want to fly drones for recreational purposes must demonstrate that they know the rules by passing a test and obtaining a license. Consider the following proposition. Permission to fly any kind of drone should depend on passing a test. Okay. So I won't go through and read the statements. You can pause and read through those yourself. Your goal is to try and drag and drop each of these into the spaces that will be a rebuttal of the other one. So having a look above, can you find the rebuttal statement for the statement, drones can pose a safety risk and can compromise people's privacy? Which statement do you think would be the best statement that is the rebuttal of that? One of the techniques that I strongly recommend you do is, instead of trying to pick which statement is the rebuttal of one here, what I would strongly encourage you to do is to try and identify out of the 4 statements which ones are for the proposition and which ones are against the proposition. And then once you've worked that out, then you decide which of those 2 on the for side fit in against rebutting one of the against statements. Okay, and that increases your odds quite a bit. Okay, so that gives you virtually a 50-50 chance on one side and on the other as well. So here I just wanted to bring across and show you. So here we go. Here is I've just done this very quickly. So you can see that the statement 1, drones can pose a safety risk and can compromise people's privacy, is rebutted by this statement here. There are laws that restrict and control the use of drones. Okay, so this is saying that we need a test because drones can be dangerous and can compromise people's privacy, and so we need a test to make sure that people, don't break these rules. But the against is saying, well, there are laws. We don't need to have a test because people simply need to follow the laws of the country, and if they break the laws, then they'll be prosecuted accordingly. So you don't need an additional layer. So that's what the against is doing there. So you can see that here again. Drones can carry cameras or even weapons. So it's saying that we need a test because drones are dangerous, and also cameras, meaning invasion of privacy. Whereas the against, or the rebuttal here, is flying a drone as a hobby is a harmless, enjoyable family activity. So it's saying, no, they're not dangerous at all. That's just overblown and, beyond the pale. Okay, I won't continue on, but as long as you're clear that in the first question that you'll be asked in the critical thinking test, and the second question usually, will be asking you to do something along those lines. Okay. Now, one of the things I haven't mentioned in this video is that it's really, really important for you to pay attention to the amount of marks that you get for each question. The entire test is scored out of 40, and each question has a different weighting. I strongly recommend to you that when you go through and read the test for the first time, you identify the highest marks, the next highest, and then the lowest marks. A big problem that many students have told me is that they've spent too much time on low scoring marks. So please keep that in mind. Particularly for the written responses, you want to invest your energy in the high scoring ones. Obviously you want to get everything to the best of your ability, but really keep that in mind. Okay. I'll leave you to have a go at this question here. You can pause here and have a read. And some of you have already done this on the test, but I just wanted to show you some of the answers here. And so there, I'll just put that up as a quick screen for you to watch. Okay. Now the other thing is that people tend to do quite well on the first couple of questions in the test, even though most people say that they were the trickiest, or they thought that it was the trickiest. The ones that people didn't think were so tricky were the ones that people didn't do so well on. interestingly. Okay, let's go through and just have a quick look at question 3. This is a high scoring question, and it'd be really good just to look at what are the features of a strong answer here. So here we go. What is this question asking? Let's go through it. Some countries are currently trialling the replacement of social welfare payments with a universal basic income for all citizens. In such an arrangement, everyone receives a basic payment, which means that people do not have to find paid employment if they do not want to. Consider the following arguments for and against the proposition below. Here's the proposition. Australia should trial a universal basic income, or a UBI. Okay, now here are the statements that you've got to identify, to just go through quickly and read. And now your task is here. Which one of the arguments from A to J about trialling a UBI do you find more convincing, and why? Analyze the arguments presented rather than offering your own opinion about the proposition. Okay, so it's really clearly asking you to utilize what is given in this question and not go beyond it. Okay, and it's also asking you not to say which one you think is the best based on your personal belief. It's asking you to put forward an argument to justify why you think one statement here is stronger than some or all of the other statements there. Okay, or what is the strongest reason? All right, let's have a look at a response that the assessors indicated was a high scoring response. So this high scoring response here selected D. If they do not have to work, some people will take their leisure activities seriously so as to enrich themselves and society as a whole. Okay, how do they support that? Here we go. D is the most convincing as it plays on one's sense of community by stating that a UBI system could in fact enrich the community and make Australia a greater place to live. In today's society, it is almost impossible to create and maintain healthy relationships as people will have less time at work, and they will have more time to help grow themselves as a person and make social connections they otherwise would have been unable to. And so it's a bit ungrammatical, but it's it's going back to the statement D. By having a society in which everyone feels connected to each other and to their community, everybody will have a greater sense of life satisfaction, leading to a socially, mentally, and even physically healthier society overall. If people are enriching themselves, this means that most of our society will become filled with citizens who have greater skills and a healthier mindset compared to our current model of society, in which people are often overworked and do not get the opportunity to attempt enriching themselves or grow their skill set. This person's a little bit afraid of full stops, it seems. The sentence is very long, but here we go. This is really, really great, this example, because this person summarizes their argument in a clear statement at the end. An enriched society further adds to the sense of community that would be felt by all citizens, and also assists some people's mental health, which can also lead to positive developments regarding their physical health. So there's a bit of a statement and a clear articulation of why D is the best proposition above. Okay, so you can see how this person has unpacked or drawn out the implications of what was in D and tried to structure it into an argument, and you can see clearly how it moves forwards. Okay, it's saying by having a society in which everyone feels connected, then everyone will have a greater sense of life satisfaction. Then this means we'll have a socially, mentally, and even physically healthier society. You can see how they're saying if this, then this will occur, and this is good because this will lead to that other thing. Therefore, we can say on a whole that this is the best reason why we should have a universal basic income. Okay, so you can see how that really holds together as an argument, and it's clearly putting forwards a flow to the thinking there. Okay, one of the things this statement could have done, one option, if you were interested in sort of approaching this question in a different way, would have been to consider the strength of the contention in relation to some of the other statements. You might have liked to have addressed the opposition arguments and explained why this argument is stronger than the ones being posed for the against side. And you'll see that that's done in some of the other examples. Okay, but the key thing is thinking about how you can draw out the implications. Sometimes some students tend to paraphrase or shrink the statement. In this, you're wanting to draw it out and look at how they link together and showing clearly the links between the ideas that are embedded in that little statement. Let's go to the next one. Question 4, 6 marks. So this is another high scoring mark that you really should make sure that you spend some time on. Most students tell me that they didn't feel time poor during this exam. They felt that they had an adequate amount of time to do it. So hopefully you will have the same experience. And please don't think that you need to overwrite. Some students do that, and that really doesn't help you or the marker. You're just wanting to try and, as crisply as possible, clearly and succinctly articulate what your argument is. Overwriting actually stops you from knowing. Sometimes when you say everything, you say nothing at all. Okay, that might be a song lyric, I'm not sure. But here we go. Nationalism can be defined as a devotion to the interests of one's own nation beyond the interests of other nations, or the common interest of all nations. The word is sometimes used to imply extreme loyalty or fanatic belief that one's own nation is better or more important than other nations. Consider the following for and against arguments against the proposition below. And the proposition is, nationalism should be discouraged in the interests of international harmony. Okay. Now, here is what you need to do here, underneath those statements. Having considered the arguments, offer your position for or against this proposition. So this is asking you to put forwards the best argument that you can. You're encouraged to go beyond what's in the question here if you think it might be worthwhile. The vast majority of responses in this that students have provided, I'm told, in the examiner's report, stuck with what was given in the question here, all of the reasons. Okay, so don't think that you have to be creative and come up with something new. Okay. All right, let's have a look. Here's a high response to that question. Sorry, yeah, that's just reiterating what I've just mentioned here. The terms of the question allow students to introduce their argument, and okay, that's just repetition of what I've already said. Okay, here we go. Let's have a look and analyse what's this high-scoring response and how it's gone about it. Nationalism should be discouraged in the interests of international harmony. Okay, clear statement of what they're arguing for at the front. It's really great. The very definition of the word nationalism is to devote one's interests to their own country rather than any other nation, which can easily put a barrier in moving forward to achieve international harmony. Okay, and then the next step is to say that nationalism is directly opposed to international harmony, and you can't have one without the other. You can't have one and the other. They're mutually exclusive. Okay. Really nice and clear. A strong national identity leads to extreme nationalism. This can be destructive as it creates an us against them attitude. This can lead to racism and xenophobia, even though nationalism in itself is not racist. The implications of nationalism can be. So it's saying nationalism isn't necessarily the same as being racist, but it can lead to racism and often does. Okay? Really great argument there. This is extremely harmful in trying to achieve international harmony as acceptance of other cultures and the mutual understanding that one culture is better than others. It's critical to achieving this goal. Nationalism can only hinder this as its social effect can be widely devastating. Okay. Patriotism is also used as a weapon to separate people. It is a powerful tool to create hate for people who are other, which is not in the interests of international harmony. Nationalism and patriotism can induce violence to people that are seen as other, which creates a hostile environment for people of different nations. Some people say that patriotism encourages sympathy and unselfishness, like family attachment. This is true, but only to the people of one's nation. Okay. Now, what's really great about that little section there is that they're using the devil's advocate. They're actually putting forward a counter-argument against their own position, but now they're going to reject the strength of that opposing position. Okay. While these are good qualities to have, it encourages people to only be sympathetic to people of their own nation. Okay. So, which does not help achieving international harmony. Okay. So sympathy and unselfishness must be spread to everyone, not just the people of one's own nation. All right, and here we go. Here's that nice final restatement and clear articulation of what the argument is and the conclusion. The only way forwards to achieving international harmony is through discouraging patriotism and encouraging the equal treatment of all cultures, etc., etc. So you can see how that's put forwards a really, really nicely structured argument. You can see the steps in there really, really clearly. And what I think is a really the reason why this is a really strong response is that it's putting forwards a counter-example, the counter-argument rather, against what alternative perspective might put forwards. Okay, I hope this is giving you a flow and a sense of how you could respond to some of these questions. Okay, this one I think is I think everyone finds this question quite easy, and I think that if there was going to be an easy question, I think this would be the one. I might be wrong. It's a low-scoring question. It's asking you to analyse and assess research questions that are given above here. Okay, so I won't spend too much time on that, but obviously there are a whole different number of ways to critique a research question, thinking about the scoping, thinking about the potential for implementing the methodology, and that's what this response has done here. Okay, so if you have a look at the response down below, a high scoring response, they've critiqued A, and so A was the question, the research question articulated here is, would consumers pay less for gas and electricity if these commodities were owned and managed by governments? Now, they've shown the argument that the person has put forwards here is that it aims to investigate the possible effects of a hypothetical change. How would you actually measure something that's not actually there? Okay, that's an impossible task. And the results that you would get would be, highly contentious and very, very difficult to do accurately, as the person makes the point. So, from a methodological standpoint, this is quite weak. There is no right or wrong answer, I should point out quickly. It's up to you to put forward a good argument, and there are many, many different ways to doing that, okay? But thinking about all the elements of research that you've gone through, you might like to go back and have a look through the course and just list what are those elements of research that we've talked about. What are the key elements, and then that will actually set you up to look through all of these and then be able to say, okay, I think that one's weak from the perspective of the methodological design, or the scoping, or it could be that it's not significant or important, for instance. That might be another one, and then try and develop your position from there. Let's go and have a look. Okay, here we go. This is question 7. This is a low-scoring one as well. 3 marks, okay? So keep that in mind. Nowhere near as high as, I think it was questions 3 and 4. It says here, present the strongest argument to support the proposition that cars should be banned from the centre of Melbourne. Okay, why do you think it is the strongest argument for cars being banned from the centre of Melbourne? Okay, all right, nice and simple question. Not so easy to come up with an answer. Let's have a look at what the person said. Now, here's the statement of what the examiner has said. They said the following response provided a sound discussion of the experience of the city of Melbourne, arguing that walking is practical and that car transport is not convenient. The issue of crosstown traffic was considered. Alternate routes are recommended. The final sentence provides a neat summary. Okay, let's just jump down, and have a look. Where's that final? In effect, here's the final sentence. In effect, the presence of cars in the CBD creates issues for everyone wishing to experience the city, and in the end doesn't improve driving time for most. Okay, so you can see how that's a really, really nice conclusion. It summarises or shows how the evidence or the reasons that the person has marshalled to support their view go to support their conclusion. Okay, in a really, really strong way. All right. Have a read of that, and you can see in this they've got a whole number of ways of showing why their contention is right. They obviously look like they're very passionate about this. Actually, they've come up with some really good reasons. That sounds like they might live in the city. Now, the other one here. So question 8 is 3 marks, and it's saying the contrary. So it's asking you to present the strongest argument against the proposition that cars should be banned from the centre of Melbourne. Why do you think it is the strongest argument against cars being banned from the centre of Melbourne? Okay. So what is the best possible argument that you can marshal in favour of your own position? Now, the examiner's report has said that people actually really struggle to do this well because they tend to do the first question and they think of a reason to support the contention, and then they struggle to come up with an argument against. I don't know how to avoid that problem, but just keep that in mind. It's really, really hard. So maybe before you actually write down your 4, it might be worth using some pen and paper to just look at the pros and cons and then try and develop your argument from there. Because some people just get invested in thinking in one way, and then when they come to the next question, they just go completely blank. So maybe before you do both, simple strategy, try and think the issue on both sides, and then generate your arguments from there. And then, of course, you might want to sort of consider doing some counter-arguments for each. So looking at the counter-argument from the 4 perspective of the arguments you put forwards from the against. All right, that might be a nice little help. I'll leave that one there, and that should give you a general sense of how to approach the critical thinking test. I haven't gone through all the questions because some of them are quite similar. What I wanted you to just keep in mind, this is your little checklist. When you've finished responding to the tasks and it's time to go back and read through and fill in the blanks and tidy up and fix up some of the questions and improve them, this is what I'd like you to do in your mind. What is the argument, okay, that I'm articulating or expressing, okay? And in order to know what your argument is, you need to find what we've called in this course the language of argument. Where is the signposting, okay? Those examples of high-scoring ones, I don't think did the signposting as well as they might have, but I really strongly recommend that you use it. It's using if, then, therefore, but, however. On the other hand, on the one hand, you can see then that all of these ways of indicating to your reader that the argument is there and it flows. That forces you also to think about how one reason is linking to another and or providing support or offering a counterexample or whatever it might be, okay? How does it link together? That's what they're really wanting to see. And if you use the language that makes those links explicit, that will be excellent, okay? Next thing, have you used the language of argument, and what is the argument? So what are the premises? What are the reasons that you're using to support that conclusion? Okay, can you clearly identify the reasons that you're giving, okay, in your own writing? Now the other one, just a simple, if you're stuck and not sure how to show that the position that you're arguing for is strong, then think about what the opposing arguments are and maybe talk about why they're not as good as the one that you're putting forwards. And that might be a really easy way to help you crack the nut of a difficult question when your mind goes a bit blank and you're not sure how to really open it up. Think about what the opposition might say and analyze why it is that you don't accept those, okay? And that'll help you be able to justify your own argument. Don't do that all the time. Don't simply go and say, I'm right because everyone else is wrong. That's terrible. That's really, really dangerous to simply put forward your position on the grounds that you think that all of the other positions are erroneous. That's not what I would like to see. But if you're able to take into account the strongest argument against your own position and then show why that's not as strong as your own, then that's a really nice strategy. Now the next step, how well do the reasons support the conclusion? Okay, so think about this little example here. The survey does not adequately support the conclusion that all Australians want climate action. In order to show that the majority of people want climate action, we would need to see if the data gathered in Victoria is the same as the rest of Australia. Okay, imagine if you do a survey and you find that the vast majority of people in the survey want climate action. The thing is that it was done in Victoria, but you then argue that the survey is valid for the whole of Australia. It might be that there is a bias in your survey, and so that survey does not adequately support the conclusion that all Australians want climate action. It might support the conclusion that all Victorians want climate action. Okay, so it's that reason strongly supports that people want climate action in Victoria, but maybe it doesn't support as strongly all of Australia. Okay, so how well does your reason link to and support or that being able to accept the conclusion as true? Okay, that's something you should really be able to think about. This premise or this reason or that reason, are they how strong are they? What are the issues? It might be that you could appeal to your reader to say, if we accept that this premise is true, and you might be able to argue that there's good reason to think that the way in which the survey was designed is able to take into account the fact that even though it was only done in Victoria, it is representative of all people in Australia. There might have been a very strong methodological approach, let's say, that allows the leap. Okay, and you could say the methodological, approach of the people doing the survey, if we assume it was strong, then we can accept that. Okay, so but again, you see how that's another reason that's going to support the premise that then supports the conclusion. Okay, and lastly, the last couple of points that I just wanted to make clear is that sometimes if you're stumped, you'll have a little statement. You've got to think it through. It's about unpacking the consequences of that statement. So what does remember, going back to that universal basic income, the person in that response did it really well. They extracted all of these little threads and then they stitched them together into a nice flow of argument. So what is the consequences of saying that this is true? What would that mean? And is it good or bad? That might be another way to approach some of the questions in order to generate an argument. All right. And lastly, just going back to that point I made at the start here of this little section, is making it explicit. Be clear in your writing and what you're saying. Having those signposting and is really, really useful for you as a writer to clarify your own thinking, and obviously for the markers to be able to identify easily what it is that you're getting at. Okay, I'll leave it there. Good luck. I think that this test does scare a lot of people across the state. It's not just here or there. Every single student doing this subject has a little bit of a shock because they've been enmeshed in their own research, and then all of a sudden they have to talk about all of these unfamiliar topics, like drones and all the rest. The goal is that everyone is starting on a level playing field, which is why it's unfamiliar to you. So you're not disadvantaged in any way. The goal is to try and get you to use your critical thinking skills, which I suspect you have a very, very high level of compared to what you did at the start of the year. All right, good luck. Cheers.